Fake checks again, the manager barked, his voice sharp enough to slice through the room. His fist gripped a piece of paper. No, not just paper, a customer's check. Flames licked its edges, curling it into ash while sparks dropped onto the tiled floor. The crowd gasped. Phones lifted. Cameras clicked alive. Across the counter, a black man in a gray hoodie stood perfectly still. No tie, no watch, no flash. Just calm eyes that didn't flinch, even as smoke from his burning check drifted into his face. Beside him, a security guard pressed a firm hand against his chest, muscles taut, ready to drag him out. The manager leaned forward, spit flying with every word. People like you always try the same scam. Walk in with a fake check. Expect us to believe it. Not today. Not ever. His words echoed against the marble walls. The silence that followed wasn't really silence, it was pressure. Guests whispering. Phones recording. Some smirked. Some frowned, but all eyes locked on the man in the hoodie. The guard shifted his grip, whispering low but audible enough. Better move before this gets worse. But the man didn't move, his arms folded, his gaze steady, as if he had seen this script before, as if he already knew how it ended. From the back of the room, a woman lifted her phone higher, live streaming now. This is First USA Bank. Look at what's happening. They're burning his check. The check, already half gone, crackled and smoked in the manager's hand. He shook it like a trophy, shouting again for the whole lobby to hear, "This is fraud, and fraud has no place here. Security, get him out now!" The guard braced. The tension snapped tighter, like a rope about to break. But still, the man in the hoodie didn't budge. He didn't argue. He didn't plead. He simply stood anchored to the marble floor, as if waiting for the fire to consume more than just paper, as if waiting for truth itself to burn through the lies. And that stillness, in a room full of noise, was louder than all the shouting. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to him, the man whose silence was about to rewrite the rules of this entire bank. The flames died, leaving nothing but ash drifting to the marble floor. The manager dusted his hands like he'd just solved a problem, not realizing he'd just created one. All eyes shifted back to the man in the hoodie. He didn't speak. He didn't defend himself. He just stood there, quiet, still, unreadable. To most, he looked like another ordinary customer, maybe even out of place in this polished lobby. No luxury watch ticked on his wrist. No designer suit draped across his shoulders. Just a plain gray hoodie and jeans, the kind of outfit that bankers in this room silently judged as not belonging. He wasn't dressed like wealth. He wasn't dressed like power. And that was the mistake every single person here was making. Inside, though, he carried a memory carved deep. At 19, he'd been turned away from a bank after trying to deposit his first investor check. The teller had smiled thinly, said the system was down, then served the man in line behind him without hesitation. He spent the rest of that day in a library, sketching out what would one day become an empire of real estate and finance. That memory lingered now, like smoke he couldn't wipe away. The security guard's grip pressed harder, impatience written across his face. "Time to move," he muttered. But the man's silence wasn't weakness. It was calculation. Every insult stacked in this room wasn't breaking him. It was building the stage for what came next. A woman in line leaned toward another customer, whispering, "He doesn't look like he has money." A man chuckled under his breath. And yet, a few feet away, a younger employee, just a teller, barely out of training, glanced nervously at her monitor. She had seen his name flash across the system that morning. She had seen the override tag, but fear of her manager's wrath locked her lips shut. For now, the live stream's viewer count climbed. "They're accusing him of fraud," the streamer said. "He hasn't even spoken. They just burned his check." The man in the hoodie lifted his chin slightly, not to argue, not to beg, but to mark the moment. They thought the check was the transaction. They thought the fire was the ending. What they didn't know was that the real balance sheet of this bank didn't live in their drawers or safes. It lived in his portfolio, in his name. He was the majority shareholder of First USA Bank. The man they were trying to humiliate was, in truth, the one who could decide if any of them still had jobs tomorrow. And yet, he stayed silent. Because silence was part of the lesson. The smoke from the burned check still lingered in the air, bitter and sharp, like the aftertaste of insult. But the manager wasn't finished. "Security, don't just stand there," he barked. "Get him out. He doesn't belong here." A clerk, 2 desks down, leaned in, smirking loud enough for the lobby to hear. Same old trick. Flash a fake check, hope nobody looks too close. A ripple of laughter came from a suited customer near the velvet rope line. You'd think he'd at least dress for the part, the man muttered, eyes rolling toward the hoodie. The whispers spread fast. Scammer. Trying to get a free ride. Bet he printed that check at home. The guard tightened his grip on the man's arm. Not rough yet, but close. The message was clear. Leave quietly or be forced. And still, the man didn't resist. His face was calm, his eyes steady. He was a statue in the middle of chaos, letting every insult land, letting every word sharpen the edge of what was coming. At the far corner, a young teller named Elena glanced from her screen to the scene unfolding. Her pulse raced. She had seen his account. She knew the truth. But fear pinned her tongue. She shifted in her chair, torn between duty and courage, between obedience and justice. Manager's right, another employee chimed in, emboldened by the silence. These people always try to play the system. Phones tilted higher, capturing every sneer, every cruel word. The live stream's comments scrolled fast. This is racist. Unbelievable they just burned his money. Stay calm, bro, the truth will come out. The lobby no longer felt like a bank. It felt like a stage, a tribunal where judgment had already been passed. The manager, flushed with self-righteousness, stepped closer, pointing at the ash on the floor. You see this? Proof. Fraud disintegrates under the light. Just like that. He dusted his hands again, smug, certain. And yet, the man in the hoodie didn't blink. He let the words hang in the air, let the narrative build against him. Because he knew something no one else in the room did. This wasn't proof. This was evidence. Evidence of their arrogance, their blindness, their mistake. The tension coiled tighter, every second winding the room closer to a snap. Customers shuffled uneasily. Some frowned, some smirked, some filmed in silence. But the man stood anchored, unshaken, because storms always sound loudest before they break. The guard's hand pressed harder into his chest, a silent countdown to removal. The crowd leaned in, waiting for the outburst, the argument, the plea. That was the script they expected. But he didn't read from their script. The man in the hoodie let his arms hang loosely at his sides. His breathing was steady, measured, like someone waiting for a storm to pass. His silence wasn't retreat. It was resistance sharper than words, heavier than protest. The manager sneered, misreading it all. Cat got your tongue? He mocked. Thought so. Fraud never talks back. A couple of customers chuckled under their breath. The clerk who had smirked earlier crossed his arms, nodding like the humiliation was justified. Each sound, each insult, piled onto the air until the whole lobby felt poison. Yet the man didn't move. His stillness spread like a shadow across the marble floor. The silence wasn't empty. It was charged. The kind of silence that makes people shift in their seats, that makes arrogance falter, that makes even the guilty start to wonder if they've gone too far. He let his eyes travel, not frantic, not desperate, just slow and deliberate. From the guard's clenched jaw, to the manager's flushed face, to the shaky hands of the teller still pretending not to look his way. One by one, he studied them, and though he never spoke, the weight of that gaze pressed heavier than any rebuttal. In his mind, an old scene replayed. 17 years old, standing in another bank lobby, holding his mother's paycheck. The teller had laughed then, too, said the signature didn't match, said it looked suspicious. He remembered walking out into the cold, clutching a check they refused to cash, feeling invisible. That humiliation had fueled him for decades. It was the seed of the empire he built, the empire now standing behind him like an invisible shield. The present snapped back into focus. The guard's grip shifted again, impatient. "Let's go, man," he said, tone clipped, already picturing the push toward the door. But the man didn't resist. He planted his feet firmer. He stood as if anchored to the foundation itself, immovable. The live stream tilted closer to his face, thousands now watching. His silence wasn't weakness anymore, it was theater, and the crowd online could feel it. Comments flashed. He's too calm. Something's up. Watch, he's about to flip the script. The manager misread the moment again, puffing out his chest like victory was near. Escort him out. He doesn't get to stand here another second. But the man remained still, silent, a calm eye in the middle of a growing storm. And that silence was starting to scare them. The lobby wasn't quiet anymore. It buzzed with the low hum of phones recording, the digital chorus of lenses watching. What started as whispers became voices, some angry, some shocked, all undeniable. Near the velvet rope, a young woman raised her phone high. Her screen glowed with a red dot. Live. "Everyone needs to see this," she said, her voice trembling with fury. "First USA Bank is burning a black man's check. Right here, right now." Her stream jumped from 12 to 100 viewers in minutes. Then hundreds. Comments exploded. Tagging CNN. "Share this everywhere." Unreal. Still happening in 2025. Across the room, another customer, older, gray hair, glasses perched low, pulled out his phone too. He didn't stream. He recorded. Quiet, steady, framing every detail. The ashes on the floor, the guard's grip, the manager's sneer. Evidence. The manager noticed, snapping his fingers. "Put those phones away. This is private property." But nobody lowered their cameras. The silence of the man in the hoodie was contagious. It had turned the crowd from spectators into witnesses, and witnesses into allies. The tension wasn't just between him and the bank anymore, it was between truth and cover-up. Live for the world to judge. A teenage boy whispered to his mom. He didn't even fight back. Why are they treating him like that? The mother's jaw tightened. She kept filming. The manager slammed the counter with his palm, trying to drown out the murmurs. "Fraud is fraud. Don't let him fool you. He's nothing but a scammer." But the words didn't land like before. They bounced off the charged air, hollow, weak. From her desk, the teller Elena shifted again, heart pounding. She saw the manager's face redden, saw the crowd growing restless, saw the phone screens capturing angles she couldn't ignore. She bit her lip, holding back words she knew were true. His name is in the system. His account is real. But fear still locked her jaw. The guard gave a small tug, trying to move the man toward the exit. Cameras zoomed in. Gasps filled the room. Someone shouted, "Don't touch him, we're recording." The live stream surged past 2,000 viewers. Comments scrolled faster. "This is evidence, don't stop filming." Manager's done. He just destroyed his career live. Wait, he's too calm. Who is this guy? The man in the hoodie still hadn't spoken. But now he didn't need to. The lobby itself had become his voice. The people filming, the crowd whispering, the world watching. Every lens was a microphone, every share a spotlight. The bank thought it could bury him with silence. Instead, their fire had lit a fuse, and that fuse was already burning fast. The manager's face burned red, veins sharp against his temple. The phones, the whispers, the live stream, every second chipped away at his control. He slammed both palms on the counter, voice ricocheting across the marble lobby. "Enough! Security, get him out now!" The order cracked like a whip. The guard stiffened, tightening his grip, pulling harder at the man's arm. The hoodie barely shifted, its wearer anchored as if rooted to the stone beneath him. Around them, the crowd stirred. Murmurs sharpened into protest. "You can't just throw him out. You burned his check already, that's theft." "He didn't even resist." The guard hesitated, eyes flicking toward the raised cameras, then back to his boss. The order was clear, but the risk? The risk was growing with every lens pointed in his direction. The manager jabbed a finger toward the man in the hoodie, spit clinging to his words. "He's a fraud, a criminal. People like him." He stopped himself, but too late. The crowd had heard the venom in his tone, had felt the edge of what he almost said. A woman near the doorway gasped. Another man muttered, "Did he just say that?" The air thickened, heavy with outrage, and still, the man in the hoodie stood silent, his calm carved deeper than any shout. He let the insult hang in the room, a mirror reflecting back on the one who spoke it. The live stream exploded. Racist dog whistle right there. He almost said it, we all heard it. "This manager is done." The young teller Elena flinched behind her desk. Her fingers trembled over the keyboard. She saw the name in the system again, clear, valid, undeniable. Her throat tightened. She wanted to speak, to correct the lie, but fear still pinned her tongue. The manager pounded the desk once more. "Do your job," he barked at the guard. "Drag him out if you have to. He doesn't belong here." The guard pulled again, harder this time. Gasps scattered through the lobby. A woman shouted, "Stop! We're filming this!" The man in the hoodie didn't budge. His feet were stone, his silence thunder. He didn't fight the guard's hand, but he didn't yield an inch either. And that unmovable calm, it unsettled the entire room. The manager didn't notice. He mistook silence for surrender. He thought volume meant victory. But in truth, the louder he shouted, the smaller he became, and everyone could see it. The last corner of the check blackened, curled, and crumbled. A soft hiss, then nothing but ash drifting down like gray snow onto the polished floor. The manager let it fall from his fingers, smirking as if justice had been served. "There," he declared, brushing his hands. "Fraud doesn't survive the fire. Case closed." Ugh. But the case wasn't closed. The case had just opened. The security guard yanked harder this time, his grip pressing bruises into the man's arm. The hoodie pulled taut across his chest, but his body barely moved. He was a pillar, unmoved by force, unmoved by fire. The crowd erupted. "You can't do that." That was his money. "This is abuse." Phones lifted higher, catching every angle. The ashes on the floor, the grip on his arm, the smirk on the manager's face. The live stream chat blurred with fury. That's destruction of property. He stayed calm this whole time and they're still dragging him. Post this everywhere. The manager raised his voice, shouting over the uproar. "Remove him, right now." The guard shoved harder, the man's shoes sliding inches across the marble. Gasps cut through the air. A mother shielded her young son's eyes. A college kid shouted, "This is being recorded! Keep pushing and you'll lose your job too!" But the guard didn't stop. His duty to his boss outweighed his fear of the crowd, or so he thought. The man in the hoodie absorbed the pressure without breaking. His feet shifted, but his stance remained. His silence thickened the air, heavier than the guard's shove, heavier than the manager's scream. And then, a detail no camera missed: the ash. A breeze from the AC carried the last fragments of the burned check across the floor, scattering them between polished shoes and pointed heels. Tiny black specks of arrogance, visible to all, undeniable. A woman in a red coat bent down, filming the ashes close up. Her voice trembled with rage. "This isn't fraud. This is humiliation." The manager snapped at her. "Ma'am, step back or leave." She didn't step back. Neither did anyone else. The bank lobby had transformed. What began as a routine transaction was now a trial, and the jury wasn't siding with the manager. The guard gave one final shove, desperate to end it. But the man's feet planted again, immovable. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't raise a hand. He simply looked up, straight into the manager's eyes, as if to say, "Your fire only lit mine." And in that charged silence, every witness in the room knew something bigger than a burned check was about to ignite. The guard's shove stalled. The crowd pressed closer, their phones glowing like torches in the dim corners of the lobby. The manager puffed his chest, certain victory was just seconds away. And then the man in the hoodie moved. Not to fight, not to plead, just one small, deliberate motion. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. The screen lit his face in a cool blue glow. His thumb tapped once, twice. Then he lifted it to his ear. The guard stiffened. "Hey, no calls in here." The man ignored him. His voice came low, steady, a blade sliding out of its sheath. "Activate protocol." For a moment, silence. Then a woman's voice answered. Crisp, professional, immediate. "Confirmed. The board is on standby. Do you want us to engage?" The words cut through the lobby. Not loud, not shouted, but loud enough for the nearest cameras to catch. The live stream comments exploded. "Board? What board? Wait, who is this guy?" That didn't sound like a lawyer. That sounded like authority. The manager froze, confusion flickering across his face. What? What did you just say?" The man didn't answer him. He didn't need to. He lowered the phone slightly, letting the screen glow in full view. For the briefest second, a name flashed across it, a contact labeled simply Nia, Executive Office. Elena, the teller, saw it. Her breath caught. She knew that name. She'd read it in internal memos, attached to directives that came from the very top. Her hands trembled on the keyboard. She whispered under her breath, "It can't be." But it was. The manager's bravado faltered. He barked again, louder, as if volume could erase what he'd just heard. "Security, don't just stand there. Take that phone now." The guard hesitated. Phones were everywhere. Witnesses were everywhere. And the man in the hoodie hadn't raised his voice, hadn't lifted a hand yet. The weight in his words pinned the whole lobby still. "Protocol engaged," the woman's voice repeated through the speaker. "Awaiting your order." The air shifted. What once felt like a public humiliation now felt like a countdown. The bank wasn't watching a man crumble, they were watching a system prepare to turn. The live stream chat surged again. "This dude just said protocol. No way, he's just some random guy." Manager looks shook. This is about to flip. The man in the hoodie lowered the phone. Calm, steady. His silence once felt powerless. Now it felt dangerous. And though no one in the lobby could name it yet, every person sensed it. The balance of power had just moved. The manager's voice cracked against the lobby walls. "Hand over that phone. You don't get to call anyone. Not in my bank." But the words landed wrong. The silence that followed didn't belong to him anymore. It belonged to the man in the hoodie. He raised his chin, eyes steady, voice low but carrying through every corner of the marble room. "Your bank?" The crowd hushed. Even the guard loosened his grip. The man's gaze never left the manager. "You just burned the check of the man who owns this bank." Gasps broke like glass shattering. Phones jolted upward. The live stream chat exploded in real time. "Wait, rewind that. He owns the bank?" This just flipped everything. The manager blinked, his mouth opening then closing again, like the words jammed in his throat. He forced a laugh, thin and brittle. "Nice try. If you owned this bank, I'd know. You'd look the part. You'd dress the part." But his voice betrayed him. It wavered. The man stepped forward once, slow and deliberate. The guard let go of his arm without realizing it. "I don't dress for you," he said evenly. "I don't need to." He lifted his phone again, tilting the screen toward the crowd. A single email sat open, headers stamped with the bank's crest, addressed to majority shareholder. The name below it matched the one on his ID, his name. Elena's breath caught. She rose from behind her desk, her voice trembling but clear. "He's telling the truth. His name's in our system. VIP level. Executive override. I saw it this morning." The manager whipped toward her. "Shut your mouth, Elena. One more word and you're out." But it was too late. The dam had cracked, guests murmured. Louder now, angrier now. The woman in the red coat lifted her phone toward him. "Say it again," she demanded. "Say it for the camera." The man's eyes swept across the room, past the raised lenses, past the sea of faces waiting. Then he looked back at the manager and spoke the sentence that turned the entire lobby upside down. "You called me a fraud, in a bank I own." The words didn't shout. They didn't need to. They landed like a gavel, final and undeniable. The manager staggered back a step, his smirk gone, his authority hollow. For the first time, fear slipped across his face, and the crowd silent seconds before erupted into a storm of voices, cheers, shouts, and the sound of thousands online typing the same word at once. Justice. The manager's mouth worked, but no words came. The marble lobby that once carried his voice now carried only silence, heavy and sharp. His authority slipped through his fingers like the ash still scattered across the floor. The guard stepped back, his grip gone. He wiped his palms against his uniform, as if the weight of holding the man in the hoodie had suddenly scorched him. His eyes darted toward the crowd, toward the phones, the witnesses, the truth. Elena pushed away from her desk, standing taller now. Her voice, small minutes ago, rang with conviction. "I saw his name. It's real. He's the owner. He's the majority shareholder." The crowd erupted. Some clapped, some shouted, some just stared in disbelief. A woman near the exit turned her live stream camera on herself, whispering breathlessly, "You guys, this is unreal. The man they tried to throw out owns the bank." The manager's face drained of color. He shook his head violently, trying to salvage control. No, this is some kind of trick. He's lying. But the words were swallowed by the roar of the lobby. Every phone was proof, every witness a shield. His denial sounded weak, desperate. The man in the hoodie didn't move. He didn't need to. His stillness was more commanding than the manager's flailing. "You called me a fraud," he repeated, softer this time, but the quiet carried. "And now you answer to me." The live stream chat scrolled at blinding speed. He said it again. The power shift is insane. Manager about to lose his job live. The guard finally spoke, voice cracking. "Sir, I didn't know." "You didn't ask," the man said flatly. "None of you did." A hush swept the room again. The weight of those words, simple, undeniable, settled on every witness like a verdict. Elena stepped closer, no longer afraid. "He's telling the truth. I checked. And you?" She turned to the manager, her voice firm, her jaw set. "You ignored it." The manager tried to snap back, but his throat caught. He looked around, eyes darting for support, for anyone to stand with him. No one did. The witnesses had chosen their side, and it wasn't his. The lobby was electric now, buzzing with whispers, cameras, and the weight of revelation. The manager stood cornered behind the counter, his authority stripped bare. The guard hovered awkwardly at his side, no longer firm, no longer certain, just exposed. The man in the hoodie lifted his phone again. Calm, steady. His voice cut through the chaos. Nia. On the other end, the assistant's reply was instant, professional, and loud enough for the crowd to hear. Yes, sir. The board is standing by. Every witness stiffened. This wasn't theater anymore. This was power in real time. The man's gaze never left the manager. Effective immediately, he said, each syllable like iron. Terminate Gregory Miles from all positions within First USA Bank. Freeze his access. Lock his credentials. The manager's face went slack. You can't. But the phone answered for him. Confirmed. Nia's voice echoed. Credentials revoked. The manager grabbed his badge, fumbling. The small chip blinked red. Access denied. Live. On camera. Gasps surged through the lobby. A woman shouted, "It worked! He's locked out!" The live stream chat exploded with emojis and exclamation marks. Fired. Live. This is history. He just ended him in front of everyone. The man in the hoodie turned to the guard, his tone even sharper. And terminate Security Officer Daniel Cross. Immediate removal. The guard's knees buckled. Wait, sir, I was just following orders. You had a choice. The man cut him off. You chose wrong. The phone confirmed again. Credentials revoked. The guard's earpiece fizzed, went silent. His radio blinked red. He reached for it, desperate. But it was already dead. The lobby erupted. Guests clapped. Some cheered. Some just stood in stunned silence. Justice wasn't whispered anymore, it was delivered. Swift and final. The man in the hoodie lowered his phone. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He just looked at the two men who moments ago held all the power. You tried to erase me, he said quietly. Now watch how quickly you disappear. And in that instant, everyone understood. This wasn't just a firing. This was a reckoning. The lobby had changed. Minutes ago, it was a stage for humiliation. Now, it was a courtroom of truth, and the verdict had been delivered. Gregory Miles, the manager who shouted and sneered, stood frozen. His badge blinked red, useless in his trembling hand. Beside him, the guard stared down at his silent radio, as if hoping it might wake up and undo what had just happened. It wouldn't. Guests filled the silence with clapping, not thunderous, not chaotic, measured, purposeful. Each clap struck like a gavel, echoing off the marble. A woman in the red coat whispered, "This is what justice looks like." Her live stream ticked past 50,000 viewers. Elena stepped forward, closer to the man in the hoodie. She wasn't trembling anymore. You didn't have to do that for me, she said softly. He turned to her, eyes calm. I didn't do it for you. I did it for truth. The cameras caught every word. The manager finally broke, his voice cracking. Why? Why didn't you just say who you were from the start? The man studied him for a moment, then answered with steady fire. Because the test isn't whether you recognize power. The test is whether you respect people when you think they have none. Gasps, murmurs, phones raised higher. The livestream comments rolled like thunder. Write that down. This is the line. He just destroyed him with one sentence. The man in the hoodie adjusted his sleeves, his movements deliberate, controlled. Then he looked out not just at the lobby, but at the phones, the thousands of unseen faces beyond. You mistook silence for weakness, he said, his voice carrying like steel through glass. That was your last mistake. The words hit harder than any shout. The crowd stilled, holding its breath, as if the marble itself had listened. Then, slowly, the man turned. He didn't storm out. He didn't need to. He walked steady, purposeful, leaving behind ashes, revoked badges, and a lesson carved into every witness. Dignity doesn't shout, it endures. The live stream ended not with noise, but with certainty. And as the doors closed behind him, the story was no longer about a burned check. It was about the day a man erased an entire lie with the quiet power of truth.